All right, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning, Congressman Steube. It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning and holding this virtual town hall with all of your constituents here in Okeechobee County. You know, as a fifth generation Floridian, you've grown up really just, understanding and working for the balance between agriculture and water quality issues. And those are so very important, especially for our great resource, Lake Okeechobee. And I also want to thank you for your service to our country and courageously answering the call to serve in the war on terror following the September 11th attacks. You enlisted in the United States Army. My grandson's there as well. And you've served with distinction from 2004 to 2008 as an airborne infantry officer and a JAG Corps officer. Currently, you're serving on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, on the House Committee on the Judiciary, and several subcommittees within those. So thank you to your service for our country, our county, and definitely for the state of Florida. So I know you've got quite a few things you want to bring us up to speed on, and then we've got a few questions we'd like to ask you from our members. So it's all yours, sir.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me. Anytime I get the opportunity to speak to you guys and folks in the district, I like to take the opportunity to do that and look forward to your questions. A lot of things that people obviously, I would say the biggest call volume or issue that we have that comes into the district right now is obviously related to the COVID vaccine. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about that. And I would encourage anybody that watches this or that's watching now to go to steube.house.gov, which is our website, and sign up for our emails, because we constantly, at least weekly, are doing updates as it relates to how you can get vaccines in your community, what's happening in Washington. And so it's a really easy way for you to stay up to date with what's going on. You can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at Rep. Greg Steube. So as far as COVID, we're up to more than 3 million people in the state of Florida have gotten vaccinated. That's increasing every day. Locations are increasing every day. They're partnering with Publix. They're partnering with local community health providers. The age, I believe it was today or Friday, was lowered down to 50. So now if you're 50 or older, you can take advantage of getting the vaccine. We allocated an incredible amount of resources through the COVID, several different pieces of the COVID legislation that provided for the resources for the pharmaceutical companies to do the research that provided for the vaccines. Our part is doling out the dollars and then pushing out the vaccine. Once it gets to the state, Governor DeSantis in each state is responsible for deciding how they allocate those resources and how they allocate those vaccines. I believe we're getting to the point in Florida where the people that are eligible and are at that age limit and want to go and get the vaccine, most of those people are having the opportunity to do that. I had a conference call, Zoom, last week with some of our community health providers in our district that stated that they have more people who aren't eligible by age for the vaccine who are lining up to get the vaccine than people who are age eligible. I know from my grandmother who lives in a assisted living, independent living facility in Lakeland that 90% of the people in their facility have been vaccinated. So just about everybody in the age categories that have wanted to get vaccinated have been. So that's a great encouraging sign. And you see that with the governor continuing to lower the age with the individuals getting taken advantage of it. Some specifics. So Florida's received and slated to receive a total of 9 million doses between the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, in addition to 175,000 of the Johnson & Johnson doses. That's enough to vaccinate 4,700,000 people. And the state of Florida obviously has a population of about 21 million. So that's a good percentage of the population in a very short period of time. And I would like to give credit to the Trump administration and Operation Warp Speed. If not for what the administration did to put all of these pieces in place and instituting Operation Warp Speed, we would not be in the place that we are right now as a country. So I think it's important that we recognize the things that the past administration has done in Operation Warp Speed to get us to where we are. So that's kind of where we are with the doses. One of the issues that we had early on, I have the second most elderly district in the entire nation out of 435 House districts. And one of the concerns that we had with cities like Punta Gorda and counties like Charlotte is we had a higher percentage of those over the age of 65 that lived in those communities. And one of the challenges that we were facing was they weren't getting the vaccine at the same level some of these bigger counties were. And so my cities and counties were asking if we could do it on a per capita over 65 basis. And I'm happy to say that the governor has been responsive to that. He was in Charlotte County, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago now, with an additional 3,000 vaccines. So they are paying attention to the things that members of Congress are giving them as it relates to information. There was just recently another COVID bill that passed the Congress. Payments should start going out if you make under that $75,000 a year, or combined couple less than $150,000 a year, the $1,400 payment should be going out. If you don't receive that, feel free to reach out to our office. And I would encourage you, if you have any issue with the federal government, whether it be the VA, whether it be the IRS, whatever agency that you're dealing with, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. Again, steube.house.gov. Go to the phone number there. We can open a case for you. I constantly run into people. And in fact, just this morning in my men's group, there was an individual that was having an issue with the IRS with some of his business issues. We can easily open a case. We do that all the time. And the results are actually quite fascinating how quick the agencies respond to congressional inquiries and casework. So I would encourage anybody that's watching, if you have an issue with a federal agency, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for us to resolve that for you. That's kind of a general overview. I'm happy to get into any other questions that you guys may have, or go a different direction that anybody there in Okeechobee would like to go. And thanks for having me.
All right, and good morning again. And I forgot to say, I'm Paulette Wise, Executive Director for the Chamber, and with me, our President of the Chamber, Tabitha Trent. So, Tabitha, you want to start off with the first question?
Sure. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. So our first question is, please tell us if expanding telehealth for rural communities is a priority, and what the future for telehealth reimbursement and ongoing assistance looks like.
That's a great question, which obviously dramatically affects rural areas that don't have access to big hospitals and large amounts of doctors and specialty care. When I was in the state legislature, Florida actually was kind of on the leading edge as it related to telehealth before the pandemic. So luckily, our state legislature, and I filed several bills when I was in the state legislature, addressed this issue and started opening up telehealth, especially for the need in rural communities. Through the COVID legislation, though, there's a lot of things that have opened up as it relates to telehealth through COVID legislation that otherwise wouldn't have been approved through Medicare, and then the federal half share of Medicaid and some of the healthcare issues that we have facing our country. So a lot of that was opened up. So now you can take advantage of telehealth and it'll be reimbursed through Medicare or Medicaid. That traditionally didn't happen, but because of COVID and obviously people not being able to travel and being able to go into their doctors, the expansion of telehealth has been pretty tremendous through those bills. And there is a large effort with myself and other members of Congress to try to attempt to keep those changes that were made pursuant because of COVID for telehealth in the law permanently. So if you want to continue to use telehealth for talking to your physician or for medical care, that you can continue to do that. So there's a lot of bills. I've been included on several of them that would permanently put together what expansions have been made in the COVID packages for telehealth and make them permanent. So rural communities like Okeechobee will be able to continue to enjoy taking advantage of telehealth, and Medicare and Medicaid will continue to reimburse those type of appointments.
All right, thank you. Our second question. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on the economy. We appreciate the efforts the government has taken to keep businesses and individuals safe and surviving. Our local businesses have taken steps to ensure the health and the safety of their customers and employees are now open for business. However, businesses need employees to create and deliver the products and services required to keep up with demand and to remain viable. The pool of individuals returning to work following the shutdown is anemic. While we understand there are individuals who still need assistance, some of the benefits of the American Rescue Plan of 2021 appear to serve as a disincentive for able-bodied individuals to return to the workplace. What efforts are being taken by the government beyond business loans to ensure the solvency of our local businesses and to incent these individuals to return to work?
Yeah, two things, and that's one of the major reasons why I voted against the last American Rescue Plan, the last COVID legislation, the $1.9 trillion package that the Democrat-led House and Senate pushed through. There wasn't a single Republican in the House or the Senate that voted for that piece of legislation, and one of those pieces of that, while a lot of people felt that way, was the issue that you just highlighted, how hard it is for small businesses to be able to find people that want to work when they're getting paid an additional $400 or $600 a week on top of unemployment compensation. It's actually incentivizing people not to go back, especially for your service industry jobs, especially for your manufacturing type jobs. Everybody that I talk to that either owns or operates a business, whether it's small or large, is seeing a huge challenge in being able to bring in people and retain workforce. I mean, just yesterday when my wife and I went to lunch after church at the restaurant we typically go to, they can't even open up all the tables after all the stuff with COVID because they don't have enough wait staff to be able to help to be able to work the different tables. And they keep trying to hire, and there's not people out there that are willing to work because they're on these unemployment compensation programs. That's a real issue that I don't think the Democrats understand the impact that that's having on people actually working. When they're making more money not working than working, people obviously aren't going to go to work. Now, on the business side, one of the good things that we did early on, this was almost a year ago, was the Paycheck Protection Program, which reimbursed businesses that continued to pay their employees. There was a little bit of money that went back to that. I actually was involved in doing a bill for 501c6s, so organizations like the Chamber and other organizations that are 501c6s in the beginning of the Paycheck Protection Program weren't able to take advantage of that program. They now can take advantage of that program, and there was more dollars that were allocated to those resources. But you hit the nail on the head. If we're going to continue to give money, if you add up the $1,400 payments that just went out, the $600 payment that went out in December for a family of four on top of unemployment compensation, you're talking like $10,000 that the federal government is doling out in a period of 2 months to individuals. That is a big incentive not to work when they don't have to, if they're going to continue to get paid by the government. So I don't support programs like that. I think we need to help the people that need help to get back up on their feet. But once they're able to work, I don't think we should be disincentivizing people to get back into the workforce. And if you ask any small business owner that I've talked to since COVID hit, that is the number one biggest challenge I believe facing our small businesses. But there is money in the Paycheck Protection Program. Again, if you either applied for that or you've had issues with that, don't hesitate to contact our office if you're not getting the things that you need to get through the program. We have the ability to reach out to the SBA and help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question has to do with daylight savings time. Is there any chance that we may be able to make this a permanent change?
One of my favorite issues. I actually, it's funny that you bring that question up, because just today I was listening to the radio and they were saying that they're still having a hard time adjusting to the time change. I have a hard time personally adjusting to the time change. If you know the history is kind of interesting. So I think people need to know what the history is. We as a country adopted daylight savings time in this back and forth time change way back in World War I, and the purpose was to conserve fuel. There's actually a lot of other countries that have done away with it. There's actually 2 states, Hawaii and Arizona, that don't follow the back and forth. I don't feel like it's necessary to do the back and forth. When I was in the state legislature, this all actually came from me going to the barber shop. My barber was complaining about the fact that it was horrible to try to get her kids up to get to school when we changed times. And she asked me if there was anything I could do with it. So we passed a bill at the state level that would make Florida in daylight savings time permanent. Well, unfortunately, Congress still has to act. I've filed the bill each year I've been in Congress. Vern Buchanan did it while I was in the state legislature to try to make this time permanent. Marco Rubio, Senator Scott have gotten on the bill. When Trump was president, he had acknowledged that he supports being daylight savings time permanently. I 100% support the idea. I think if we take the majority back in 2022, Republicans take the majority back, I think that's an issue that'll pass overwhelmingly. It passed overwhelmingly in the state legislature. And if you know the reasons why we did it in the past, there's absolutely no reason why we do it now. One of the only negatives that I've heard about not are about keeping it is if it's dark in the fall when kids are going to school, if we don't fall back in the fall. And school districts have the ability to change their start times of school, and that's very easy to do, or consider that for each year. So I think there's 100% reason to not do this exercise twice a year where we go back and forth on daylight savings time. I'm still working on that. Vern Buchanan's the lead on that in the House, and both Marco and Senator Scott are pushing that in the Senate. So I don't know where the Democrats are on that. They're obviously in control, but I think that's absolutely an issue that Congress, I can guarantee you if that bill was on the floor of the House, it would pass overwhelmingly with bipartisan support. And if you know the reasons why we had it in the past and why we shouldn't have it today, it just makes sense. So hopefully in the next year or two, we won't have to go through this exercise anymore.
Very good. Thank you.
That would be really good. All right, next. How can the states feel safe that more crime and COVID aren't being let into our country with no border control? Please share your thoughts regarding H.R. 6 and its dangerous legislation. Can this be stopped in order to keep our borders and states safe? You know, your thoughts on the crisis at the border, especially those thousands of children that keep coming in without parents, adults, they just keep coming across.
And there's a reason why it's children coming across. And I think this is not being talked about. We have chain migration laws in the United States. I actually have a bill that would do away with chain migration. But the reason why they're bringing children across the border is if the children get into the United States and Biden gives them amnesty, either through H.R. 6, which is the Dreamers Act, or give any of these children who are brought illegally across the country, if they're given citizenship, then they, through the chain migration laws of our country, can bring in every single member of their family. And I'm not talking about just the nuclear family. I'm not talking about mom, dad, brother, sister. I'm talking about great grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody that is lineally related to that individual who now has status in our country. Now, all of them can come into our country through the chain migration laws. Some people call it like the anchor baby law. And it's because once a child gets here and gets status, they can bring in all their family members. So that's why you're seeing this scourge of children being brought to the border, because they know if the child gets into the United States and gets status, then everybody legally that's related to that child can now come in. That's very, very dangerous for the safety and security of our country. If you look at the numbers, this is not politics. Look at the numbers. The number of children being brought to the border right now is astronomical. It's like 500 something a week or 500 something a day that are being detained, in comparison to like 100 or 200 during the Trump administration. The Trump administration took very strong, principled issues and decisions which making our border safe. They required these individuals that are seeking amnesty to do it in their host countries, like in Mexico or in Guatemala. They weren't allowing these individuals to come in. They weren't doing what now Biden has reinstituted. What's the catch and release? The catch and release program is, unlike what the Trump administration was doing, after they detain the individuals, they release them, and they have to show up at a hearing for their amnesty hearing. Well, 96%, this is a fact, you can look it up. Go to DHS's website, Department of Homeland Security. 96% of the individuals that are detained and then released don't show up for their hearings. That's incredibly problematic for our country. And if we're not deporting these individuals and we're not securing our borders, there were 2 or 3 individuals who were on our terrorist watch list who tried to smuggle in through the country. Our enemies throughout the world see what is happening on the border and are sending people that direction because they know that Biden is reversing all the good policies that Trump had in place. Unfortunately, there's not much Republicans can do right now because we're not in the majority of the House. I will say this: any bills that relates to immigration, so H.R. 6 that you asked me about, which I voted against, that bill has to go to the Senate. And as long as senators like Senator Manchin and the senator from Arizona hold on the filibuster, they've got to get 60 votes to get those bills passed. I do not see that happening. I don't see an instance where they get 60 senators to pass this bill on the Senate side. So that's my hope, that senators like Joe Manchin out of West Virginia holds true to the filibuster. If they don't, I'm very scared for the future of our country on a lot of these issues. But Hopefully, as they've previously stated, they'll hold on the filibuster. They're going to need 60 votes to get that bill passed, and it won't happen. But that bill's already passed the House on mostly party lines. And hopefully the Biden administration is going to start to see the negative impact that this is having on our country, both in crime, like you highlighted, and other things that are happening in our country.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next question. Please discuss the state of funding for Lake Okeechobee projects and the amount of money that is being allocated to our county, as well as how this relates to the Harmful Algae Bloom Essential Forecasting Act that you recently co-sponsored.
Yeah, so let me take you a step back. When I was in the state Senate, we passed as a legislature, the Senate president at the time, Joe Negron, was a big impetus behind this, a $2 billion restoration plan for Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades and water quality in the area, both in the Kissimmee River Basin, Lake Okeechobee, and south of the lake. Part of that was the holding area, the EAA, which is south of the lake. That project has started. It's going to take a couple of years for that to continue and to work its way through the process. One of the things that the federal government did before I came into Congress, but that was part of that overall plan, was the $514 million for the repairs to the Herbert Hoover Dike. I was able to be with President Trump when he came and visited that project right soon after I got elected to Congress about 3 years ago. He came down to Lake Okeechobee and visited with us to look at the improvements that were being made on the Herbert Hoover Dike. Those are ongoing. That was a $514 million federal program and federal appropriations specifically for Herbert Hoover Dike. There was also, and this was the last funding, I have the numbers here that I'm looking at, there was $250 million for Everglades restoration. You have heard Governor DeSantis talk about taking some of this money that the states have now received under the COVID packages to pay for Everglades restoration. The Senate president, you have heard, the new Senate president, Wilton Simpson, is talking about funding. There's a ton of projects in or around the lake and in the Kissimmee River Valley, Kissimmee River Basin, that have been allocated, but have been approved, but the resources haven't been allocated. And they're going to take some of this money, this legislative session, the state House and Senate are in session right now, and allocate the resources to do some of these projects north of the lake, which in my opinion has been the issue all along. When you have water with high amounts of phosphorus and things in it coming into Lake Okeechobee, in my opinion, you need to treat that before it goes into Lake Okeechobee. And unfortunately, a lot of the projects that have been approved have been south of the lake to hold the water before it's discharged down the Caloosahatchee. So a lot of these projects should be complete by 2025. I've talked to a lot of people involved in a lot of these projects, the Army Corps of Engineers and others, that have said 2025 is going to be a very positive year for water quality in or around the lake because a lot of these projects will be complete. So you haven't seen a big algae bloom issue, at least in the last year or so. And that's good because they've been trying to control the in and out flows on Lake Okeechobee, and some of these projects are obviously starting to come to fruition. And I will continue to make this a huge priority for me while I'm in office. And one of the things I just signed on to was an algae bill that would help allocate more resources to help with these issues.
Thank you.
All right, and our last question that we have so far is in regards to the latest round of stimulus funds per county. Can you share the dollar amount that Okeechobee County will receive and the requirements that would needed for spending it?
There's no, what the Democrats did is, as far as, I don't have the exact number for Okeechobee County, but we will get that to you and send that back to you.
Okay.
But one of the things that were in the bill, the monies that are going to local governments and states, the way that Pelosi put in the COVID package, the 1.9 trillion that just passed, is there's no requirements that money has to be spent specifically for COVID. So the good thing with that is if your county commission in Okeechobee feels like there's other issues in their budget that they need help with from the federal government, they can use those resources for just about anything. So that's going to be a benefit to the county to be able to be flexible with that money. That was one of the challenges that we had. Look, if we're going to spend $1.9 trillion of our tax dollars for a COVID package, shouldn't this money go to COVID? But they didn't have that requirement in there. So as soon as that money's allocated, and I believe it was 10 billion that was allocated to the state, and then Governor DeSantis can decide how to allocate those resources. But we'll find out and follow up with you specifically if there's specific amounts that are coming to the rural counties like Okeechobee.
That is great. Well, I know there's probably a lot more questions out there, but anyone that has any questions send to you, where should they send them?
The best thing is steube.house.gov. As soon as you go on our official website, it'll ask for your email address to sign up to our newsletter. That has all of our contact information, all of our phone numbers, all of our calls from, I represent 9 counties, are all filtered into one main office so that we can kind of have an idea of and control on all the different calls that we have from the district. We have Katie, who most of you probably know, who is out in our rural counties. She's out in our rural counties and is in our Lake Placid office, is always a resource for those that have any needs or issues out in the rural counties. But steube.house.gov is the best place to go for all of that information. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We also have a Parler account, and I believe we've started a Rumble account as well. And it's at Rep Greg Steube to follow us there. We actually put a lot of information on our Facebook and Twitter pages as things come out. So as we get information about COVID availability, vaccine availability, things that are happening on a timely basis, we put that information out. So anybody watching or that's going to watch this later, I would encourage them to go to those sites.
Anything else you would like to tell us before we close? I'm sure you have so much going on in Washington.
I'm just glad to be back. We were in Washington for 4 straight weeks. We've got a couple weeks back in the district. This is a committee week, and they're doing all of the committees virtually, which is interesting to do it via Zoom and WebEx like this. But I've got a lot of committees this week. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you guys do for Okeechobee. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out to our office if we can be helpful with any federal agency.
And thank you for fighting the good fight. Keep the faith, stay the course, and finish well, Congressman.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. God bless.
You too. God bless you.
Thank you.